investigation. But again, that needs to be for all potential violations of our code of conduct. So but I also would greatly, strongly recommend that we go with the recommendation of the Personnel Committee and rescind the public hearing at this point.
Yes, I would urge us to go forward with rescinding the resolution for a number of reasons. Even the process that Councilman Hahn and Councilman Streetman hasn't necessarily recommended the process, but that in and of itself is not what Robert's Rules provides for us as the process. We can't go back to a confidential conversation. We can't go back to a confidential committee. We can't go back to the conversation that perhaps some of the members of council had. We can't unring this bell. And for that reason alone, for us to pursue this with independent counsel would, I think, one, set fissures within our group here that probably are going to be irreparable. I don't see any good that can come out of it. I think that Councilman Bogosian summed it up. This is lose, 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 and we would be an absolute spectacle in the community, not just our own community, but the surrounding communities. The news lives for days like this. I don't understand, and please, any councilman here, please tell me what good can come out of it. So I would ask, I think we all could have done something different back in June when this root of cause occurred. And I'll certainly accept some responsibility for that. I think we could all take a little dose of humility here and figure out a way we can move forward without creating a spectacle in the community. We've got bigger things to do.
Are there questions? Oh, Jan, sorry.
I second what Scott said, and I think our first step is to rescind the notice to have the public hearing on this, to step back, and we could come back to council with a decision later on about what the next step should be after getting advice and consultation from some legal entities. And I would think let's just take the first step tonight, please, and rescind this public trial that we're talking about having.
So John, can I ask a question on the, I've not watched the Personnel Committee, but read the minutes. So this rescission is obviously to take care of that resolution. To Jan's comment, I don't want to read into where the Personnel Committee had a conversation. Are we picking it back up with a redefined process?
Yes, in fact, staff is drafting some of the discussion. We had a long discussion around what the process should be, and it includes some type of a committee structure first to be able to really look at the charges and determine if they're warranted or not. In order to take it to the next step would be a trial. I think the trial, I think Brent passed on a trial process, and it's the actual trial looks a lot like what's in Robert's Rules. So I think between those two things, we'll be able to come back to council with what we view as what would be the process going forward, should this ever happen again. But I think, as Scott said, at this particular one, we can't go backwards, and I think it'd be very hard in terms of fairness at this point to go forward with this one. And that's why we're suggesting that we rescind it. Personnel Committee will come forward to council with what the process would be any future cases like this.
And was there conversation in the committee around, our code of conduct, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't stand on its own from how you handle a violation of the code of conduct. I don't know that Robert's rules, for lack of a better term, in this case. Was there a conversation around that? Does that make sense?
No, I'm not. I mean, Robert's Rules defines a process for if there is a disciplinary case or how you work through it for one of its members. I think in this case, it would apply, the violation is a violation of the code of conduct. So if if there's been a charge made that you violated the code of conduct, then it would go through that disciplinary process as they define it.
But I think our definition and what our city attorney had drafted was kind of to Blair's point, what Charlotte's done, what Mount Pleasant done, you kick it to an independent council and let that happen and come back to.
Yeah, but
Come
at
back.
this point, there's lots of problems, right? I mean, Robert's rule says very clearly that the members do it, not an outside body. But I really struggle at this point. How do you choose an independent counsel? I mean, Councilman Hahn has already said, we've got a lot of conflicts on here, so who chooses that independent counsel? Is it council that's already determined that they're conflicted?
I think it's our city
Is it-
attorney.
Well, there's already issues with that in this case as well. And I mean, if you look at the actual charges, there's some, so I don't know how, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, I think, is what Scott says, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's no good, it's only going to cause more questions and more conflict for this council, and we've got much more important things to work on than this.
And I want to just add, I think we can give assurances that this is not going to happen again, that we as a council are going to have conversation up front. We're going to address issues as they occur. For us to not have addressed what happened in June, we didn't listen to each other as well as we could have, in my opinion. And the conversations were not had real time. The phones were not picked up. The conversations were not had. And depending upon your perspective, some may said that we had a conversation, others may feel like they weren't heard adequately. I think we've got to be more mindful of each other's concerns as they occur. This festered and it wasn't addressed, and here we are. I think we can all assure each other that we're not going to come here again. And I think that's important. I think that's important for us to send that message to the community that we're not going to spend our time dealing with issues like this in the future.
So you're asking to rescind it and not bring it, just forget the whole thing?
Well, I think I'm asking that we not go forward with any disciplinary hearings or any other thing else with this case.
So we go in executive session and you're going to be comfortable in the future? That everything that we need to hear from our attorneys or whatever, that we can openly discuss and feel comfortable that it will not be divulged?
I do, and I feel just as comfortable if we had some spectacle of a hearing and the outcome was we censure Ms. Myers or whatever the outcome would be. I'd feel just as comfortable today as after we ended that very long, tedious, ridiculous, embarrassing process and got to a point that I'd feel no different. That's what I'm saying. The outcome and the result of this is not going to change anything except embarrass the city.
I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and go through everything, this whole process and defend myself tonight. I don't feel that this is the right place. I do think that we all need to think about ourselves and what we've done and said, and the things that were violations, could have been violations of things that were in executive session. Items, specific dollar amounts that were posted on social media on June 9th. There's blame that goes around here. And I'm the one who had the courage to write an article in order to get what I believed out in the open that was in the public's best interest, which was my oath. And that's another issue. What happens when our code of conduct lists certain things that are in conflict with our oath? And, there have been plenty of things that people have told to their friends that have gotten out in the public that were discussed in executive session. So please don't make it seem that I am the only person that has ever gone down that road. And, you know, the specific details, if you all believe that we need a hearing, then vote. That, you know, that's your decision. I don't think it's best for the city. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know the solution because we've already gone so far down this wrong path in violation of Robert's Rules of Order, which are codified as part of our city code. We are supposed to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And we haven't. So we've already gone down that road. So if we want to start talking about missteps and things that individual council members have done wrong, that's fine. But we're going to talk about all of them, not just me. So that's, you know, but that's, the vote tonight is whether to go forward with the hearing. That's.
Yeah,
what we're
I
voting
don't
on.
know, and John, I don't know how we would go forward with that. And Jan, I mean, we put a recommendation forth. With this particular instance, I see no avenue that's within the guidelines and the actual documents of the code of conduct with which we can go back and redo. We don't have a do-over on this one. We just don't.
Rusty.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seems to me we have some threatening language going on here and some threat, I don't know, going forward. But I will say this, I stand by what we decided as a council. We put a code of conduct in place back in, whenever it was, in September, or whenever. We voted 8-1. I guess it was September 13th. We had an overwhelming vote, 8-1, to hold a hearing and to uphold this resolution we put in place. That included the council member that was accused, who wanted a public hearing to discuss this issue openly. That's the issue that I'm looking at. In regards to, an article that got published initially that sort of precipitated the whole thing, it clearly was admittedly information that came out of an executive session. I just don't see, as a council, how we can allow that to happen without having some kind of, excuse me, please, without having some sort of process in place, a hearing or whatever else to get this resolved. I have no problem. In fact, I would encourage, if we can find a way to have that hearing using Robert's Rules of Orders going forward, some outside counsel, whatever that means. I don't want to be a part of that in regards to being judgmental. I think we did not do our work there. We all admit that. But we still have an issue here that, for the sake, I think, of credibility of this council, we need to deal with, and that is upholding the resolution we put in place and just not saying, okay, it just goes away. So that's all I've got to say.
Blair.
No, I agree with what Councilman Streetman has said, and even more so now because the council's being threatened. How do we walk away when we have threatening language that if we do this, bad things will happen? And you just walk, you can't do that. You have to investigate. You have to have a third party come in, and they have to make a recommendation to council. I don't see a way around it.
I'm not understanding what this threatening language is. All I have said tonight is that if we are going to think and look at potential violations of our code of conduct, we have to look at all members of council's potential violations of code of conduct. That's all I've said. And if you find that threatening, I am sorry, but it's not intended to be threatening. It's just a statement.
I think we need to go.
So we've got a
we need to
motion.
go by Robert's
Sorry.
rules, you know?
Sorry.
And like everybody speaks once, everybody gets another chance, and then they speak the second time, and that's it.
Then we vote.
Then we vote.
Jan, you got a comment?
I would just like to say that what I've been talking about, and I think what we decided in the Personnel Committee was, this is a procedural problem at this point. we made a mistake in passing the resolution that we did. So we need to rescind that mistake and go back to the beginning. We need to, Robert's Rules of Order is written both into our C code. It's also referenced in our Code of Ethics. So it is relevant. And we can go back to that and start again with confidential investigation, even though we know that's a little hard to say with what's already gone on, but to find out where we go from here. But I think we need to first rescind the mistake we made. And also, I remind you, this was a last minute addition to our agenda. And we didn't have time to discuss it or learn much about it. And we met next day. And so I think, I know I acted in the heat of the moment, not fully understanding what I was voting for. So I ask that you reconsider that tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jan, I'm hearing something different from you and the rest of the Personnel Committee. Very different ends of the spectrum to say, rescind this and we'll go back and start over on this particular issue, as opposed to we're skipping this issue and moving on to the next one. So I'm not sure what's exactly coming out of Personnel Committee, given that you're on that committee.
I certainly agree with rescinding the trial.
All right, we've got a motion and a second, and I've had discussion. Nicole, you want to do roll call vote on this one? So again, the motion is recommendation from the Personnel Committee for council to rescind Resolution 2022-08.
Following city code, I'm going to do this alphabetically.
Okay. Crazy.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogosian,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Nay.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Nay.
Councilmember Ward,
Nay.
Councilmember, Mayor Pounds.
Nay.
The motion fails 4-5.
Thank you. Next item is H, discussion of recreation center visioning. With the recent retirement of Norma Jean, and as we were moving through the hiring process, it seemed like a time to kind of step back and discuss any changes we might want to make from a recreation center. I know I've had conversations with residents, and I think others of you have as well, to kind of take it to more of a community center focus as opposed to just recreation. So I just wanted to pause a little bit, and Desiree can update us on where we are with the recruitment process on this particular position. But I think we want to have some discussion tonight and just get council's input on, what does that look like if we started moving more towards a community center as opposed to just a rec center? Is there a desire to do that? Again, that would fold into, the type of hire that we may want to look to replace Norma Jean. So just open it up for comments or conversations.
While you think about it, I'll give you all an update on where we are with the hiring process. We, again, advertised the position like we have done with every other department head role. We had about 50-some applicants submit resumes. We've narrowed it down. We narrowed it down to about 25 that met the criteria that was included in the brochure and in the job description. Since then, the HR manager has conducted phone interviews. We narrowed it down to 7, I believe 8, who I'm interviewing later this week. That's where we are. Our next step will be interviewing those 8 candidates, and then those that go to the next round will be interviewed by a panel that is going to help me provide sort of insight into this hiring.
Jimmy?
So did you, as far as the process has gone so far, were you pushing the job description as more of a community center director or a recreation director?
It's it's the same job description that we've had. It's a recreation director. I think that based on the feedback that I get today, it's, I can use that information when I'm interviewing those candidates. If the council wants to look at a more community-oriented vision, I mean, I think that ultimately the skills for a supervisor are going to be very similar. It's just experience with looking at sort of a broader vision for recreation and community. People define community centers differently, so I think that that's something that we need to also identify. What are the things that make it in people's mind a community center that you want to see, reflected in our recreation department?
Well, I wish I'd spoken up a lot sooner, because definitely want to get away from just athletics and let the building and the grounds live up to their full potential. There's a lot of people that are interested in a lot of things besides just athletics, and it could be just an asset, a wonderful thing, a community center where arts and a lot of other classes that aren't being held right now, that we could look at the full potential of that whole complex. But I'm just one, but it's time for a different direction.
And Jimmy, I was anticipating your second part of that. If we have some of these 60 folks that, Desiree, you can answer this, or Janice, I'm assuming nobody would have been funneled out of that pool just because we may change direction. You're looking for a leader
Correct.
in all intents and purposes.
Mayor.
Yep, Rusty, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Ward in regards to it being more than just a recreation center. I know many times over the past couple of years I've been on council, we've had citizens that speak up repeatedly about being more of a community center, and I think this would be a good opportunity for us to really get maybe a citizen panel of some sort involved also, because I know we have a lot of people who do attend functions at the recreation area, and they've got some good ideas. And I've heard some of them expressed, and I've heard a lot of them express how it could be so much more in their mind. So let's try to get some public engagement going here so that we don't do it in a vacuum, and and really talk about what the expansion opportunities could be to not only be a great recreation department like we are now, but to offer some other things as well.
Go ahead.
May I make a suggestion, Mr. Mayor? How about we take this back to real property, not real property. Long night, Recreation Committee, and we discuss it a little bit more at that level and come back with some ideas.
I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Chairman, that's a great idea.
I mean, I don't know if it's workshops or committees, but we can go back to Recreation Committee.
As long as you keep the meetings.
Yeah, and I think, Councilmember Streetman, to your point, I mean, I would encourage residents to, email all of us with as much specificity as possible around what a new direction might look like. We all have our own ideas about where it could go or what it might look like, but I would encourage, without being tapped for a committee or an advisory or whatever, just to make it known. So, all right,
Yeah.
fair enough. Next item under new business, we have an item that I would like to suspend the rules of order and make a motion to add an agenda item, an emergency purchase request for debris cleanup due to equipment failure and the time frame to have that equipment repaired.
Second.
Questions? So that's just a motion to get the item on the agenda.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. The sound cut out.
Yep.
Can you repeat what we're doing?
Yep, so we're suspending the rules of order to make a motion to add an agenda item, an emergency purchase request for debris cleanup due to an equipment failure and the time frame to have that equipment repaired. So we've got a motion and a second.
Move.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. So our issue is one of our front loaders broke down yesterday. Repairs won't happen for another few weeks. To finish up the storm debris cleanup, our Public Works folks engaged a contractor to help. The bid that's in your packet that we just received today is from All Green Landscape, which recently performed the same work on Sullivan's Island. So we need a motion to approve the quote from All Green Landscape Services for $102,500 to finish the remainder of the storm debris cleanup with the funds coming from disaster recovery.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question,
I have one-
John?
Is there any way, since this, I think it was it deemed an emergency by the state?
It did
Or
not.
federal?
No.
That's the problem.
Okay.
So we are part of the storm debris contract with the county that's activated when that happens. Because it didn't happen this time, municipalities are left on their own. We're very, very close to completing first pass. Obviously, that's been 4 weeks since the storm. The contractor is ready to go starting tomorrow. So we're waiting for this item to be approved so that we can give them the go-ahead. And they anticipate that we would be complete with debris pickup within 5 days.
Yeah. And John, it's a great question, and that is part of our dilemma. When you have this situation where you had a storm, but there's not an emergency declared. Got a
And we certainly can't afford to wait another few weeks for
That's
the other
right.
piece of equipment to be repaired.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Item
you
7,
all.
Boards and Commissions Report. Board of Zoning Appeals, your minutes are attached. Planning Commission, minutes are attached. Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, minutes are attached. Environmental Advisory Committee has a meeting on October 27th this week. Item 8, ordinances, resolutions, and petitions. Second reading, none. First reading, none. Resolution and petition, Resolution 2022-10, a resolution authorizing the consumption of beer and wine, amplified music, and street closure at the Lovello Bike Ride on November 5th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And are you asking that to waive the reading? Rusty?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, of
please,
course,
waive the
yes,
reading.
Yeah,
I thought I heard that.
yeah, you heard that.
Questions, comments? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2022-11, a resolution authorizing the consumption of beer and wine, amplified music, and street closures at the Holiday Street Festival on December 3rd, 2022,
Motion to approve
Second.
without reading.
without reading.
Without reading. Second.
Thank you. Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Actually, I had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh.
It was a silly comment.
Sorry.
My daughter's so excited to be singing at that, so.
Silly away. That's perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that, Katie.
Not a big deal.
Item 3 is a proclamation declaring November 7th, 2022 as World Pancreatic Cancer Day. Just real quick, from a background standpoint, we were approached by the South Carolina affiliate chair of the newly recognized South Carolina affiliate of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, the community-based advocacy and support group, and requested our partnership in their November awareness campaign. So it's a fairly short proclamation that has some stats in it. I'm happy to read it, or
It's fine. We're all for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we proclaiming World Pancreatic Cancer Day, or does it already exist and we're recognizing?
ladder.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we recognize it at the city on November 17th.
Yeah. And they're attempting to get multiple municipalities, obviously, with that. So is there a motion and a second
Motion to approve
without reading?
Second.
without reading.
Without reading, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. So that concludes that agenda. So I'll make a motion, we go into executive session pursuant to South Carolina Code, Section 30-4-70A2, to receive legal advice related to potential claims concerning alterations to Isle of Palms zoning district, receive legal advice relating to the constitutionality of S40 and the restriping of the IOP connector and potential claims, and to discuss personnel matters related to Leola Hanberry Employee of the Year Award.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Oh,
I
Jan,
have
I'm
a
sorry.
just Statement to make.
Yep.
I am going to recuse myself from any discussions and actions on the PDD revisions for Wild Dunes because of a potential or perceived conflict of interest. My husband is on the board of the Wild Dunes Community Association, and on that board sits a member of the resort that may be on the other side of our discussion. And so to avoid any appearance of conflict, I will recuse myself from any of those activities, at least until I get a ruling from the South Carolina Ethics Commission on the situation. So I will not be joining you in that discussion tonight, but I would like to join you in executive session for the other two items on the agenda.
Thank you. And we'll need that in writing at some point, Jan. Thank you.
Right, I'll fill in the paperwork and submit it in writing.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Off record at 9:04. Quick break.
It would take a quick break.